Welcome back, and thank you so much for joining us. So today, with our continued spotlight, we're talking about something that really we can't keep quiet about anymore, and that's human trafficking. I know sometime last week, Citizen TV reported on a lady who was found in a freezer in Saudi Arabia, and countless other cases of people who are coming back talking about torture and violence in Saudi Arabia. Human trafficking is not isolated to Saudi Arabia, it's all over the world and in Kenya. So to help me talk about this issue is Sophia from Cradle and Cornel from ANCAN, which stands for?
ANCAN is Africa Network for Prevention and Protection Against Child Abuse and Neglect.
Okay, let me present you with a scenario. It's something we all do. I'll go to my rural village. For me, it's in Gem in Malanga, and I'll get someone to come and take care of my house and take care of my children, etc. Sophia, is that trafficking?
Well, we have to...
Wow.
As child trafficking.
So who are some of the traffickers in terms of who goes and takes these children and goes and takes these women? Because trafficking, from some of the statistics I've looked at, 50% are women, a further 30% are children, and 20% are males. So who are some of the perpetrators in these issues?
Okay. If you look at the whole scenario of child trafficking, we have key actors. And the key actors involved in the victims. We have the traffickers themselves, and also the parents or relatives who live with these children. So that means that it's a whole, it's a complex whole, whereby children are recruited, and therefore there is some form of consent from the people that they live with. So these people are promised that when these children are trafficked, there are good returns. Basically, we are talking about economic gains. So by the time they leave their homes, they are already promised. So they are key actors in this, including even businessmen, because they are the end users. They exploit the children in different ways. Because we are talking about both boys and girls. When girls are being trafficked for the purposes of CSEC, commercial sexual exploitation, and when boys are trafficked for the purposes of working in some of these agricultural plantations. So really, the key actors are very much involved in this.
Okay, I just want to ask a question from Ahmed Al-K, and he says, are the agents recruiting Kenyans abroad, especially low-paying jobs, worst working conditions, and and really bad treatment, are these considered traffickers as well? When you recruit from abroad, like all these house helps who are going to Saudi Arabia, is that human trafficking?
Yeah, definitely that is human trafficking, because when they go abroad, that is international, and meaning that they go for bonded labor, and sometimes they have been promised. At the end of the day, when they land there, they have been duped. They realize that they have been duped, so they end up, operating under very squalor conditions.
Okay, let's go to how is someone recruited. There's a case we were talking about a bit earlier, where a friend of mine basically said that his daughter was playing on the street 1 minute, and the next minute the daughter was not there. And then you have all the cases of people who come in and they say, oh, but they came to my house and they promised me this lavish job in Saudi Arabia, or wherever the case may be. How are people recruited?
As just following on to what he said in terms of who the traffickers are, and really that anybody could be a trafficker.
What happens in that case? Because I know if I ever fly out of the country, just as a general, rule of housekeeping, always go and register with your embassy. This cuts across the board, right? Yeah. But what if you're in a country, I can't think of one right now, Argentina or whatever, that does not have a Kenyan
responsibility, and it's now very explicit in the law.
Okay, we're going to go back to that right now. But just before that, two questions for you, Cornel. First of all, why don't victims run? I know if I was presented with the idea of a better life and, greener pastures, and then I actually go there and there's no greener pastures, but a lot of victims don't run until, if you remember some of the cases that have been reported, they were sent back. Broken arms, broken legs. They were told, okay, you're not any use to me, and they were sent back. Number one. And number two, first thing, let's just say it happens and I am taken to Saudi Arabia. How do I keep myself safe?
Okay. Now, remember, we have been talking about human trafficking, and it's very complex, and under the secretive way that it happens. So when victims end up in their countries of destination, they find it a bit hard to run away, because they were promised. So in that process of waiting, they become patient. So as they are patient, of course, they're rewarded. but the reward is does not really commensurate to what their expectations were. So at the end of the day, they end up looking for other ways of survival. And if somebody looks for other ways of survival, they really want to be independent, okay? They want to seek for other ways, like seeking for employment elsewhere. But you see, at the same time, they're kind of in a, they're bonded, you know, labor, they're bonded in terms of the kind of work that they're doing. And then sometimes you also think of what are they supposed to do? Just to answer your question.
Yeah, once they get there, what are some of the things they should do? Or even before they leave, to make sure that everybody knows where they're going. You know, so in fact, there's a text that came here and said that contacting the embassy abroad may not be possible because some of these guys are blocked from even leaving their houses. They are blocked for even contacting anybody upon arrival. The first thing that comes to mind is always photocopy your travel documents, your passport and everything, to always have a photocopy with you in case something happens, it's stolen, you're on the street, for example. But what else can I do to protect myself once I'm in another country? Okay, when you're in another country, it's good to maintain contacts. You know, sometimes it's good to inform relatives. They must be aware of they must know your whereabouts. But sometimes we fear telling them because we really want to reap out the benefits. But the most important thing is we have to, once we register with the embassy, we also must inform our relatives, at the same time inform our... Okay, I have to read you a text that came in on our Power Breakfast page because they basically said that, okay. Well, if we decide to blame one of the rackets that is actually in government offices, or for example, if I go to a police station and I report it and I'm offered a bribe to keep quiet about this issue. In fact, it brings back to my mind the case that we talked about a bit earlier about this a friend of mine whose child was grabbed. When they found the child a couple of months later, the officer gave him 500,000 shillings to keep quiet about this. So we have corruption vis-a-vis human rights and somebody's life. So how do we deal with that battle, Cornel? Because it's a big issue. It's like you go and you say that my child, something has happened to my child, and then they're like, well, here's 50,000 shillings, forget about it. How do we deal with that issue? Okay. In 2009, ANCAN commissioned a study on towards elimination of child trafficking, a study that was focusing on 4 countries. That is Ethiopia, Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. So we were looking at the borders. You know, the borders are porous. Yes. And along and across the borders, there's a lot of, you know, movement of people inside and outside those borders. And we came to realize that within the government, you know, offices, of course, them being key players to ensure that the issue of child trafficking is combated, then they exacerbate the problem further when they kind of take bribes. And remember, they are not the only ones. We also have the brokers. If they are part of it, then it becomes very complex for you to understand what is happening. And normally we usually say the more we create awareness, the more people are aware of the situation. In fact, someone asked here, Brian Chariot said, are there any effects to sensitize the public on human trafficking in Kenya? Yes. Definitely, because when you venture into issues of capacity building and awareness, there are key actors that must be put in play. And let's go back to basics. The origin of trafficking, child trafficking. We will realize that parents have been so much involved in it because they're the ones who give consent. So from the origin, we start creating awareness. We have schools because parents are the primary socializers. We also have to look at the secondary socializers. I mean, the secondary socializers, and the school is where students or people spend most of their time. So if awareness creation is intensified, then that would mean children, parents, teachers will know, you know, the magnitude of this problem, because we are just looking at it from a preventative point of view. Right. Once we arrest this issue from a preventative point of view, then we are not going to really deal a lot with the, you know, curative aspects. Absolutely. But I'm not saying that really that lacks. It's a combination. We have to put a combination of interventions to ensure that we address the four P's. Prevention, protection, prosecution, and partnership. Okay. When I talk about partnership, probably here, I mean, right now, ANCAN has mobilized
organizations that work on the fields in the field of child protection, and therefore we have formed what is called Nairobi Child Protection Team. So this team is a team of all these health, legal, and social workers. Yeah. So all these actors come together and look at all the issues that affect children, including child trafficking, so that if our key competencies is rescue, then we can work with a certain organization whose key competency is repatriation. So this concerted effort is very important, and when we do this, we curb this challenge.
Final question.
Well, I think what's important for me, and perhaps we didn't tackle it a bit earlier, was the issue of domestic trafficking, and it happens it's very common, and it's sometimes ingrained in our cultural practices. We have instances where we have, and it's very common for you to bring a child from the rural area to come and work for you in the urban setup, and then you end up exploiting this child for child labor purposes, for instance. And it's very common. It's those things that are very important, I guess, for us, because they're very prevalent, perhaps even more prevalent than the cases of cross-border trafficking.
Absolutely.
The cases of domestic trafficking are so many, and we have almost accepted the culture, which we need to create a way. But some of the things that you should look out for is how to identify a victim of trafficking. How do you know that someone's a victim of trafficking? And you can tell that perhaps from, they show signs of abuse, they show signs of fear and intimidation, they're always under surveillance, they don't have the documents, for instance, with them. So you can, you just have to open your eyes, I can say, to trafficking and the possibility of someone being trafficked. And it could be anyone, and that's what people need to open their eyes to.
Exactly. Last words on how to protect our children, how to protect ourselves even from trafficking, both domestically, because that's a very big issue, as well as internationally.
Okay, child trafficking, there is a lot of misconceptions. And one need to realize that we have push and pull factors. So when we look at the push and pull factors that push children out of their homes to go and or become victims of child trafficking, because the economic conditions in their homes. So that really pushes them out.
Absolutely.
And for us to counter this, then we must come with robust strategies that look at the entire livelihood. Because once you focus, you direct energy on that would mean you make families bond, and therefore families can redirect their energy in productive work.
Exactly, you're taking away the push factor.
Exactly, that's the push factor. And also, children themselves must also be involved in this. They must be involved in the decision making in issues affecting their lives. So within schools, formation of child rights clubs is also very key, because here children are empowered in the skills. When children know the extent and nature of child trafficking, they will protect themselves, because children are just not mere recipients of services. They also must be involved actively to make decisions in their lives. So what I'm saying here is, if children are involved so much in the decisions affecting their lives, then they would be part of prevention of child trafficking.
Thank you both of you for coming. Thank you so very much. I don't think there's much more I can say on this issue, except, like everyone has said, and we've constantly said this, is empower yourself right down at the family level and the individual's level. Also in terms of, if I decide I'm going to go traveling, always photocopy your travel documents and register with your embassy when you get there, and always tell people where you're going to be. Tell your family, tell your friends exactly where you're going to be. We'll be right back. Except, like everyone has said, and we've constantly said this, is empower yourself right down at the family level and the individual's level. Also in terms of, if I decide I'm going to go traveling, always photocopy your travel documents and register with your embassy when you get there, and always tell people where you're going to be. Tell your family, tell your friends exactly where you're going to be. We'll be right back.